what's up? It's great. I'm gonna take these off because it's the glare. Okay, today I'm going to talk about something that I think is kind of a neglected topic in the FTM community. And not neglected in the sense that people aren't mindful of it, but rather in the sense that there's not a lot of readily available information. And that is healthcare. I think we all pretty much know the physical surface effects of tea on the body. Hopefully, if you're going to start tea or you're already on tea, you understand those effects. But a lot of people, even those who are already on testosterone or who plan on starting testosterone, do not fully understand the internal effects and the internal impacts of testosterone. So that's what I'm going to cover in my next few videos. And my hope is to kind of extend my knowledge to you guys and create sort of like a comprehensive guide to FTM trans healthcare. And so the topic I'm going to start with is cholesterol. And I'm sure most of you know, if you have started your journey into transitioning already, that cholesterol is really, really important. And doctors focus very much on cholesterol. It's kind of a complex issue to fully understand. So I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit, and we'll start with the basics. So I'm going to put a bunch of links down at the bottom there to some articles, some sources that I've gotten this information from, and I actually wrote a paper for the health issue of the self-made men, and I don't know when that's going to be published, or even if that's going to be published. So this is kind of just like a summary of all of that information in video form, so you don't have to read anything. Okay, so let's start with, if you're currently on testosterone, think back to the time before you started, right before you started. Most likely, you had to undergo a blood test. You may or may not have had to fast before that blood test. This test, if you didn't already know, is called a lipoprotein or a lipid profile test. And this test screens for any abnormalities in lipids, which are fats in the body, any abnormalities in your lipids, and that is used to assess your approximate risk of developing illnesses such as cardiovascular disease. Though the test measures a few key things. It measures total cholesterol, high-density lipoprotein cholesterol, which is also known as HDL, low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, which is known as LDL, and triglycerides. Now, it's recommended that adults over the age of 20, they say healthy adults over the age of 20, receive a screen every 5 years, once every 5 years, or on regular intervals when there are risk factors present. Now, testosterone therapy is a risk factor, which we'll discuss later. Why? So this is why most clinicians and endocrinologists require a transgender male undergoing hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, requires them to get either a biannual, which is every 6 months, or annual, which is every year, blood tests, and so they can monitor all of those things. Now, cholesterol. Cholesterol is sort of like a waxy fat, and it's necessary for cell stability. It helps the body build new cells. It helps to insulate nerves, and it also helps to produce some hormones. Normally, in a healthy adult, the liver makes enough cholesterol for the body, but the body also absorbs cholesterol. Cholesterol also comes into the body through dietary sources. So, a high intake of trans fats and saturated fats and simple sugars usually will cause an increase in cholesterol, and you have more cholesterol than you need in your body. So, too much cholesterol is a major risk factor for heart disease. When the cholesterol levels are too high, there's an increased development of fatty deposits in the blood vessels, which are often referred to as plaques. So eventually these plaques go through the arteries, and they attach themselves to the walls of the arteries and cause them to harden and become narrow, and thus the blood flow through those arteries is restricted or sometimes even blocked, and as a result, the heart is deprived of all of the oxygen-rich blood that it needs in order to function, and you have an increased risk of heart attack. Now, high-density lipoprotein cholesterol, or HDL, as it's sometimes referred to, is supposedly the good cholesterol. That's what HDL is referred to as, the good cholesterol. And the purpose of these high-density lipoproteins is they travel through the bloodstream and collect pieces of cholesterol from where the cholesterol doesn't need to be, such as the lining of the blood vessels. And then they transport them to the liver, and the liver breaks them down and reprocesses them. So HDL essentially protects you from heart disease. It protects you from getting that plaque buildup in the arteries. So the higher your HDL reading on your lipid test, the better. So high is better for HDL. Like HDL, the low-density lipoprotein, or LDL, also is a transporter of cholesterol, but the LDL is generally called the bad cholesterol, because that's what deposits in the walls of the arteries. And then over time, the white blood cells in your body start to migrate towards the LDL and attempt to protect the blood vessel and try to digest the LDL, but it's really counterproductive, and that just results in a toxic oxidization of the LDL and then inflammation of the artery wall. So you don't want that. So LDL needs to be low. Finally, triglycerides. Triglycerides are chains of high-energy lipids that are found in your blood, and they are stored in fat cells and released between meals for energy. So the triglycerides act as an energy source for you between your meals. But too high of a level of triglycerides leads to excess fat gain. So the high triglycerides are responsible for fat around your belly and around your hips, and they can be caused by a lot of things, biological and environmental alike. A couple causes would be like obesity or like an underactive thyroid. Both could be biological, both of them being biological. Alcohol abuse can cause high triglycerides, kidney disease, even certain types of medication can cause high triglycerides. And I'm going to post a chart down there on the bottom of the video, and just to kind of give you guys, to indicate desirable ranges for all of these things on your lipid test. So, now that we have all of those basics covered, and you know the terminology behind what we're going to talk about, let's figure out why it pertains particularly to the FTM community, why it's extremely important that FTM transgender men pay attention to their cholesterol levels. While there's not a tremendous amount of information available regarding patient health while undergoing HRT, there are a few key things that we know, and these are things to pay close attention to in order to stay in good health. One, you'll often see information floating around the internet, or even from doctors or other reliable resources, that testosterone therapy actually lowers cholesterol. It is true. This is true. But to see the problem there, you have to take what we just talked about and understand the different elements of cholesterol, and you have to dig a little deeper. And you will realize that testosterone therapy has an adverse effect on that blood lipid profile because it causes a decrease in the HDL, which I told you was the good cholesterol, an increase in the LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, and an increase in the triglycerides. And all of this combined results in a higher level, or a higher increase of, a higher risk, of cardiovascular disease. Number two, HRT hormone replacement therapy, testosterone therapy, sorry, my dog is being crazy. Androgen therapy, as it's sometimes called, serves to redistribute the fat towards the abdomen. Like I said, those triglycerides add belly fat and hip fat, and belly fat is bad. Belly fat is the worst type of fat to have. It causes restriction on all of the vital organs, and this visceral fat leads to, health issues beyond, being overweight and being, if that's not aesthetically pleasing. It could lead to sleep apnea, diabetes, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, stroke, and cardiovascular disease. Surprise, surprise. So belly fat is bad. Number 3, testosterone therapy increases the production of red blood cells. The increased production causes sort of a thickening in your blood, and that poses a risk for heart attack and stroke because thicker blood, think about it, has more difficulty moving through the arteries, especially if the arteries are already constricted. So this blood thickening is especially common among current and former smokers who already have an increased amount of red blood cells. So if you're on T and you're a smoker, you have two things going against you. You have, you're predisposed to that thickening of the blood with your smoking, and the testosterone therapy will only serve to make that thicker, make it more prominent. So the main point of this whole thing, it's very, very, very important to keep your triglycerides low, to watch your HDL and LDL numbers, pay attention to those, know what they mean, get your blood tests, get your lipid profile done at least annually, if not biannually, every 6 months. So at least every 12 months, if not every 6. Some doctors will even request more frequently, depending on your predisposition to these health issues. Triglycerides especially respond very well to dietary and lifestyle changes. So in order to keep all of these numbers where they need to be and to keep your cholesterol in a good, healthy range, you need to always focus on trying to burn more calories than you consume. So exercise daily if you can, if not, 3 or 4 times a week. Eat a diet low in carbs, simple sugars, fats, and increase your aerobic exercise. Get your heart beating, get that blood flowing. Even if it's just getting up off the couch and taking your dog for a walk, at least it's something. Quit smoking. If you're a smoker, I am guilty of it. I am a social smoker, but it is very, very, very dangerous to be a smoker while you're on testosterone. And also alcohol consumption, not as huge of a deal. I might kill my dog. Not as big of a deal as the cigarette smoking, but alcohol consumption does lead to issues. It leads to all sorts of things, including problems with the liver, which I'll discuss in a later video. So there's that. There's the kind of 101 on cholesterol and cholesterol health, and why it's important to focus on that if you are on or if you are beginning hormone replacement therapy, if you're starting T. So like I said, I'll put some links down on the bottom of the video, and my next video, I'm going to kind of try to stay in this same realm and focus on these healthcare things. And I have a lot of trans-friendly healthcare providers that I want to share with you guys too. So I'll put that on my next video. I'm going to try to keep everything, related to itself. So check out the bottom, check out the links, and watch my next video for some more health updates. Hope you guys